Hey everybody. So you've probably heard the term echo chamber. Echo chamber, where people hang around with like-minded people and they just kind of hear the same viewpoints and opinions and perspectives that's their own, and it just reinforces their own perspective because that's the people they hang around with. And so it can have disastrous results. When we talk about the different elections, the most recent election where Trump won, and when he won the first time in 2016, yes, there's a number of factors, but one of the factors that many pundits point out is that when you read the polls and how shocked people were, especially back in 2016, how shocked they were that Trump won, or this past election, how he across the board got more votes, even in the most democratic areas. Not that he won all the states, but he got so many that people were shocked. And why is it? What's the culprit? One of the culprits is echo chambers. The people a lot of people in the media and academia and Hollywood, they just kind of reinforce each other's viewpoints. And a lot of people who are looking and watching this and taking these polls and paying attention to these polls, how accurate can they be? Because they're hanging out with people who are like-minded. They don't really venture out into the world of the deplorables. There's a whole bunch of other people out there who don't live in Manhattan or Los Angeles or a large metropolis. And they don't necessarily have a college degree or 2 or 3. And they don't necessarily make hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the people like that, they hang around with each other and it just reinforces their ideas. And then when a guy comes along who's so unlike them and wins an election, they're shocked. They don't understand it. How do they not see this coming? Echo chambers are very destructive. And Judaism recognized that way back when. Thousands of years ago, we understood this. And it comes up, we're presently doing the tractate called Sanhedrin in Daf Yomi, the page of the day of Talmud. Sanhedrin deals with courts. And there were 3 different courts, 3 levels. There's a Beit Din, a court of 3 rabbis, 3 leaders, 3 judges, and they would take care of the little stuff, the financial disagreements and such. But then you had the equivalent of like a state court or a provincial court, the Sanhedrin Katana, the small Sanhedrin, and that had 23 judges. And then you had the Supreme Court, 70 or 71 judges, there's difference of opinion, 70 or 71 judges, the Sanhedrin Gedola, the main Sanhedrin. And when it comes to those larger ones, the Supreme Court or the one in the particular province or state, the equivalent of that, which they would try, very serious trials. So it says, we came across, Rav Kahana says, Sanhedrin Sharu Kulam Lechova, if one of these courts of 23 or even 71, the Supreme Court, let's say there's a completely unanimous decision. All 23 judges or all 70 judges, they all say this guy is guilty. Every one of them. You would think, oh, there you go. Like, you can't get better than that. What does the Talmud say? What does Jewish tradition say? Potrinoto. He's exempt. He's acquitted. Mistrial. We can't make that guy guilty. And the Gemara gives the reason why is that. And it says that they didn't have halanat. They didn't take their time overnight to think. They came to a decision. When it comes to these serious cases, if everyone agrees right away that this guy is guilty, that's a red flag. Then we exempt the guy. Because nobody gave a dissenting opinion. Nobody gave like the other side. And that's a problem. And the moment you have everybody thinking the same way, you can't arrive at the truth. You can't arrive at justice. That's the problem with echo chambers. When everyone thinks alike, and that's all they surround by, you can't get to the truth that way if you're in that environment. I'll give you a personal example. I remember a number of years ago, with one of my children, the school said that they wanted to keep this child back 1 year. It was very early on in kindergarten. And me and my wife, we were kind of surprised at that. And so we arranged a meeting, and there was the principal there, and the school psychologist, and this child's teachers, and there was a whole committee there from the school. And I had done my homework, And I looked into this and wondered, like, is it a plus or a minus to hold a child back for a year? And there were pros and cons. There was all kinds of difference of opinions on it. But when I got to that meeting, all I heard from every one of them was why it's a good idea in this instance to hold this child back. And I wrote to the principal afterwards and I quoted this Gemara and I said, this is why I can't trust what was told to us. Like, we made the decision not because of them, but despite them. Because the moment you get everybody, not one person in that room quoted the study or the perspective of why it could be harmful to hold a child back a year. And that's what bothered me. That's what told me that I'm not getting an objective perspective for the good of my child. Maybe, yes, the decision was the correct decision, but not because of them, because they were all parroting one another. That is always a red flag, and that's when you can't trust things. When you're in a group of people, and again, the Gemara says the Sanhedrin. We're not talking about just schleppers over here. We're talking about the brightest, the best, the most intellectual. And indeed, oftentimes you see that in life, that it's the intellectuals who, because they're so smart, don't think that they can entertain the opinion or the idea of somebody else. They forget what the Talmud says, the Mishnah says, Ezehu Chacham, Halomed Mikol Adam. Who's the wise person? The one who learns from everybody, even the person who's not as bright as you. And so the Sanhedrin, which is the best and the brightest, when they all agree on something, that's when we know we got a problem. When all the best and the brightest are saying the same thing and don't even entertain the alternative perspectives, that echo chamber, that's never a good thing. Always be aware of that. Always be on the lookout for that. When everyone's saying the same thing, make up your own mind. Don't follow that. Have a good Shabbat.